I think one of the main reasons that software engineers don't actually start making content is that they see these really polished channels with really nice thumbnails, and when you click into them, they've got this crazy editing and B-roll and everything, and you just think, God, if I was to do that, it would take me days, and it probably does, and he probably pays an editor to do a lot of this for him, but it doesn't need to be like that. So in this video, I want to show you a developer who literally just gets in from work, records a video, edits it the same evening, and posts it, and makes about 70k a year. And then I want to take that process, show you how you can automate it so you can do it even faster. And then finally, I'll just walk you through the complete workflow so that you could post something literally this evening. I'm Matt, and I help software engineers create personal brands so that they can unlock fully remote, vertically scaling income like these guys. And if you're wondering why they're doing it, it's because typically these guys are seeing about $50 per 1,000 views. So you could do the maths on how much they're making posting content. So what does something actually reasonable look like? Well, I know I talk about him all the time, but one of my favorite channels on YouTube, and I'd recommend that you go and subscribe to him, is WebDev Cody. And just by scrolling through, you can see he's got the odd thumbnail edited, but this is a guy that most of his content has no clickbait thumbnail. It's just him talking through some code, and that's his process. So as you can already tell, compared to Mark Liu, there is no editing like crazy in this. This guy works full-time as a software engineer, gets in from work, records something interesting, whether it's something related to what he did at work or maybe a personal project that he did, talks people through it, edits it, and uploads it. And he's actually done a video where he talks about that process, so let's draw it out. So let's say the topic that he talks about takes him 20 minutes to record. You know, he's got in, the thoughts are fresh, and he's turned on the camera, recorded himself in a code base, and he's walked us through it. Cool, 20 minutes. Now, the problem is that's 20 minutes of raw footage. That's going to include him sitting there silent, thinking about what he's going to say next, and it's going to include mistakes where maybe he said something, thought about him, maybe that was wrong, he's tripped over his words. All sorts of things happen when you record yourself, right? Well, that's where we get into the world of editing. So the first thing he does is he cuts the silent moments. He goes through the video. In his video editor, he'll see stuff like this, which is the WAV form of his voice. And these little gaps between peaks are him not saying anything. And here you can see that's only lasting a fraction of a second. You know, if you stop talking, you'll have like a long period where there's nothing useful. So what you can do is you can make two cuts and then just collapse the section that you don't want. And essentially what you do is you go through your entire, let's say 20 minutes of footage, cutting out those sections. And that in itself can take about the same length, because you've got to imagine that you're going through, you're stopping, you're cutting the sections, removing them, moving on. And by the end of it, what you have is maybe, instead of a 20-minute video, you'll only have 10 minutes left of content because half of it was silence. And it will be that big, especially if you're just starting out and you're talking into a camera and you're not that confident to just continuously speak. And once you've completed that and you've cut all the silences, the next thing that you want to do is remove those mistakes that you've made. And that will mean that you have to listen to your entire voiceover again and pay attention to where you made the mistakes, and again, cut them out. So let's say you've got 10 minutes left after the silence cutting, then it's going to take you about 10 minutes to clean up the mistakes. So I think in this scenario, where 10 minutes of the content is actually usable and 10 minutes was silent, I think you can do this entire editing section in 5 minutes total. And the way you do this is thinking like a software engineer instead of like a YouTuber. If we look back at this, you got to imagine that a video essentially looks like this, right? Sections of you talking, sections of silence, sections of you talking. And the process of cutting the silence, you're not deciding, like in the cleanup, which was the better take. You're just thinking, is this background noise and silence, or is it me speaking? Why are you doing that? If you can write code, you know how algorithms work. You can automate these kind of logical problems. And so that's exactly what I did with Python. So I'm not going to walk you through the code, I'll just walk you through what it does. So the first thing that it needs to do is identify what is actually speaking against what is background noise, because the problem is that you could actually have like maybe a dog barking in the background, or even like the gentle sound of like a fan. So if you just cut on what is like 0 decibels, if you've got a microphone, it's never going to be there. So the first thing we do is we kind of set a threshold where it's like, right, anything below this is going to be just background sound, and anything above it will be the voice. And then what you get is nice timestamp sections of the audio that you want to keep. But the problem is that if you cut directly on the line like this and immediately collapse it to, let's say, where the speaking starts again over here, the video becomes very, very choppy. So what you actually want to do is shift that forwards by a couple of fractions of a second, so then it still sounds like a normal person speaking, because if it's too tightly cut, you're just going to sound like a robot, and it's not going to be good. So once you've identified those, you can use something like FFmpeg to just cut those sections together, and what you're left with is the video automatically silence cut for you. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So here's an example of one that I made previously, and you can see here big pause where I'm thinking about what I'm saying. I'm trying to pay attention to what's going on in the IDE, so I don't want you to see this, I want this to be cut out. So if we run that app on that video, you'll see here that it takes the input. So what it's done first is it's worked out what that threshold is. It's then gone across that video using FFmpeg to cut it into the slices and output the video here. So if we click that, we'll see that we went from a 3-minute video to a 10-minute video. And in the folder, we've just outputted one with the underscore cut. So if we open that up, I think the issue is related to the size of the canvas, and it's kind of on the user to feed it a reasonable size canvas for what it's loading. So let's undo that. And yeah, I think this extra column isn't really worth the time that I'm putting in it. It's already taken more than 15 minutes. I'm just going to stop that. And as you can see immediately, it's cut all the silences, and it sounds like I've already edited this. And now all I have to do is go in and edit the bits that I don't like. For those of you who keen-eyed, you'll notice that in order for us to do this in 5 minutes, even though we've automated this, we'd still have to do this at twice the normal speed. So what does that look like? So realistically, you could do this with any editor. I just like Shotcut because it's open source and lightweight, so it loads quickly and it's extensible. So if I wanted to write scripts for this, I could. If I drag in my nicely cut video, you'll see our nice waveform at the bottom there with no silences because we've cut them. If I hit play, if I was to watch through a video at that speed, it's going to take me 3 minutes to find the bits that I don't like. So if I drag to the beginning, I can simply hit L twice, and by listening to it at double speed, all I'm listening for is obvious mistakes. It doesn't matter if the odd one slips through. And then once I find one, I can slow it down. I just kind of mumbled there, I didn't say anything of use. I press S, I can create a split. S again, select the clip that I don't want. Press X, remove it. Oh, you can see there's more of a mistake there, so let's get that. So I said hits generate twice, so let's get rid of the second one. And there you go, done. And using that process, you can literally fly through this at half the length of the video because you're listening to it at double speed, and it only takes a fraction of a second to quickly listen through and cut these sections out. So realistically, using this setup of having a script that automatically cuts the silence and then just cleaning it up manually, if you get in, record yourself a 20-minute rough video talking about a topic in software engineering, you can have that video out 5 minutes later. And as I said, Cody is getting thousands of views. And with this level of views, if you just have a small product, whether it's a SaaS, if you want to sell mentoring as a service, or even if you made a coding tutorial, every time you get 1,000 views, you're likely to make a sale. 1 in 1,000 is pretty reasonable because the kinds of people clicking on your content are the kinds of people who are aligned with software engineering. So as long as you're producing something of value, this is exactly how you can turn what is broadly just talking about software engineering generally into quite a lot of money. And Web Dev Cody does a video where he talks about how much he makes, and it's like $90,000 a year. And if this all still feels a little bit overwhelming, I actually offer one-to-one mentoring where I'll give you feedback on every video you post. We can have regular meetings, and I'll give you all the tools that I use to create content. If that interests you, link in the description. Otherwise, if you want a more specific breakdown of how these content creators are making so much money, I've got this video here that will help you out with that. So thanks for watching. Cheers.